murder, secrets unfold. True crime stories, let the intrigue be told. Grab a seat, get cozy, let's dive into the plot. With Mac J by my side, there's so much to be sought. Mods from the stars, they light up the night. Chillin' with Van, everything feels just right. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. Spirit Time vibes with Lisa and Mark. Tia and Mel igniting the spark. According to Lean, curiosity flows. A curious rose in a garden of woes. Sweet misery whispers, tales that enthrall. While Matt, Meg, and Jody, we gather them all. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. So come along, join the fun tonight. In Aussie true crime, everything feels so right.
Hey, beautiful people.
Hello, everyone.
How are we all? Now, we've got rain here tonight, so I do apologise if you hear it. And the cats are freaking out because of it, so they're all in here. Now, Jay's just heard them go off for like the last 5 minutes. How are we all? Got beautiful Miss Sharon in here, number one. I think she's always our first in here. Beautiful Jody, how are you, my darling? And of course, beautiful Mac J. We've got her channel pinned to the top, so even for the replay crew, please make sure you go over and give her some love and sub up to her as well. I feel like, honestly, I don't want any more rain after the cyclone. I've had enough. We've only just got, well, I haven't even got our pool back. The pool empty, my motor was emptying it so much that I've had to turn it all off now and get someone to come out and look at the motor because it's making a massive sound since the cyclone.
Yeah, I think we've had it up, and I'm like 4 or 5 hours away from Aussie, but we've had it up here as well. So who knows? I might get a cyclone this time. Or
well, this rain here has been since about lunchtime. It's still going. It's only a little bit now, but it's been raining pretty heavy since lunchtime. So I'll send it down to you, Miss Sharon. You can have all of it. So I found us some interesting stuff tonight just to quickly look at with Williams, and I thought this might help. Excuse the ad. Can I get rid of that? No, it's not going to let me. Okay. Yes, it is. There's the arrow. So this is a map of the area of where William went missing. So this one here is Benadryl Drive. So this is where the house is that William went missing from. What, of course, is the 12th of September 2014. Down here, obviously, is Sydney, where their house is and where they left on the 11th of September. This is Heatherborough. So they were on the 11th of September when they were coming down to Kendall. They stopped here at McDonald's for a meal, and there is CCTV footage of them. What? There's CCTV footage, sorry. Of the whole, like the four of them here. I will try and find the photo. I do have it somewhere. No, leave me alone. It's Capsicum again. So this part here is here. And if you can see the orange coming through, this is the old highway. It's all changed now because there's a new like freeway part that goes all the way through. So Kendall is here, and then you go over to Kew and it turns into, I think, Lake Cat-Eye, Camden, Bonny Hills, and this goes up to Port Macquarie. So Port Macquarie's just, do you mean just out of the circle? What's about, along here? If you can you see my? Yeah, you can see my mouse. Okay. So here's the house. This is the state forest. So this was searched by the police in 2018 during the 4-week operation, which also researched the area around where William went missing. So it was around the house and out here at the state forest. This was the focus of the last search that was done in 2021. William's foster mother drove towards here on the morning that he was reported missing. So this would have been out where the truck driver saw her. This is the tennis courts. There was CC records that William Tyrrell's foster father was driving past shortly before 9 a.m. on the 12th of September. So that would have been him going out for his phone call. This is the Lakewood Shopping Centre. So this is where William's foster father drove to. They drives here around 9 a.m. on the 12th of September to make a work call and fill a subscription. So that's where he went. So it was only just, as I said, over the freeway.
Sus.
This is Bonny Hills. I have some memories of that. So Bonny Hills, this is where Bill Spedding was. So we're going to be talking about him tonight in the podcast. He was a person of interest in the investigation who was subsequently cleared by the police, and he has since moved. Now, Bill became one of the main suspects in this case for quite a long time, and he was also the reason that Gary Jubelin got fired from the police force, because it was him that he was recording. He lost a lot. He lost his family, his home, everything from this. And I think it was like 2 years ago he got a payout for it, and it was 1.8 million he got for it.
Considering what he's lost.
I know, nothing will replace. Do you mean no money figure would replace it? And he's still very active in William's search too, and in the inquest. So this is Point Road, bush track off Holston Mitchell Drive, known locally as the Ghost Road, scene of a police forensic search in 2015. And up here is the caravan lived by Frank Albert. Around the time of William's disappearance, he is subsequently identified as a person of interest to police, but has denied any involvement. So remember last week when we were on the podcast and we heard the guy scream, "Leave me alone"? That was Frank Albert. because that was his caravan.
Ah.
So I hope that helps a little bit more with the area. Hi, beautiful Linny. How are you? Grandmammy, how are you? Sorry, I was on the other screen, so I didn't see yours. But yeah. So I'll remove that. They're changing things in StreamYard.
Again?
Yeah, we've got like we've got extra boxes down. I don't know if you can see them, but there's extra boxes down the bottom here.
I think I can see 2 extra boxes.
Yeah, one's my one that I'm sharing the screen with, and there's another new one there now.
Man, I was just starting to get the hang of the one before this.
Okay. So what are we up to? Episode 7. We'll click in the right one in a minute. So as I said, this one's on the suspects and persons of interest.
Now, the Tyrrell case was perplexing because there wasn't a clear suspect.
This is Hans Rupp.
There was an initial phase searching for a lost child.
The detective who was in charge of the investigation into William Tyrrell's disappearance right from the beginning.
And that went on for a couple of weeks, and that bore no fruit at all. So clearly there was something more to the situation than a little boy lost in the bush.
But Hans doesn't want to talk to me for this podcast.
He clearly didn't wander off by himself.
So this interview you're listening to was conducted by a colleague of mine, Caroline Overington, a few years ago now, for her own reporting on William's disappearance.
What is it that prompts that feeling there's something more to this?
It was the only logical explanation. He didn't wander off. He didn't wander off. What else could there be?
What was your feeling?
Well, I think that someone grabbed him off the street, bundled him into a car, and he just disappeared. Really sad.
Hans has got good reason for thinking William was abducted. For one thing, he's a veteran policeman.
Look, I joined in February of 1974, so it's been a career of 41 years.
41 years, first in uniform and then as an investigator.
I went to plain clothes in the late 70s, 1979, and I went to the CIB in 1982.
CID means Hans was a detective, and he spent the decades since carving out a reputation as a tough, hard-working operator, working on the biggest crimes.
I think it was about 1992 I went to the homicide squad, so effectively for the last 30 years I've investigated bank robbers and murderers.
Meaning Hans knows what he's talking about. And I don't read anything into the fact that he doesn't want to talk to me. When I call him, it's 10 years since William Tyrrell was reported missing, and almost 10 years.
Sorry, I just saw that, my darling. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry to hear about your kitty cat.
Yeah. I know I get cranky at mine, but I do love them. I'm so sorry. I'm going to send big prayers and hugs to you, my darling. That is really sad. Our pets become like our children.
They do.
Okay, I'll put this back on. I had to stop her for that. I'm so sorry.
Is since Hans himself retired from the New South Wales Police. When he was put in charge of the investigation into William's disappearance, Hans was only a few months off retirement. So he explains he's been out of the loop for almost a decade. Talking to Caroline a few years earlier, however, Hans still had some strong opinions.
Murderers don't murder strangers. It's a rare event.
Murderers don't typically murder strangers, he says.
People always kill someone they know, whether that's a loving relationship or a domestic relationship or a business relationship that's gone bad. There's something to tie the offender to the victim.
The detective's job is usually finding out that thing tying offender to victim. Except William's case was different.
That's not your belief about that case.
Absolutely. This has got nothing to do with the Tyrrell case at all.
Your feeling was always that it was the stranger.
Absolutely. There was a stranger involved. I don't think any member of the family is involved at all. No.
So Hans is certain it was a stranger who took William, and his family were not involved at all. Early decisions are critical in...
Hi, my beautiful Leanie and Kitty Witty. How are you, my darling?
long police investigations. Even though Hans worked on William's case for only a few months, he still had a massive impact on the years that followed.
You retired, didn't you, after
Yes.
4 months on that case? So you weren't able to see it through. Do you think if you had, would we have a result?
That's impossible for me to say. I don't know. But I know when I left it, I think it was in good hands.
Hans says he's happy with the way he left the William Tyrrell investigation.
Look, I don't dwell on the ones that got away, but look, I'm happy with what I've achieved, and that's pretty good. And now this is a different stage of my life.
But not everyone agrees the investigation was in a good place when Hans left it. You're about to hear from the detective who took it over, the homicide squad commander who oversaw this transition, and the man at the very centre of the police investigation, who describes it as a poisoned chalice. I'm Dan Box, and from news.com.au, this is Witness William Tyrrell, Episode 7, Malicious Prosecution.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3.
What did you have for breakfast? That's a good question to start with.
Coffee.
Bill Spedding describes himself as not the kind of man to draw attention to himself. He hopes people see him as a pretty straightforward guy, an ordinary grandfather. At home, he and his wife Margaret drive an ordinary maroon-coloured Ford Fairline, which they call Myrtle. But really, nothing about the Spedding's life has been ordinary over the past 10 years. I might just wait for Peter just to come in.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Just ignore me. I'll try and be quiet.
Which is why we're meeting not at Bill's home, but in the offices of his lawyer in Sydney. Because within months of William's disappearance, Bill would become front-page news right across the country. And his lawyer is now sitting, listening to this interview with Bill and Margaret. Just thinking back to before William went missing, what was life like for you then? Was it happy? Was it going well?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, it was good at the time, yes. Business was doing well, successful in the community. The kids are in the footy teams in their weekend sport. We had soccer on Saturdays and AFL on Sundays, and met a marvellous group of parents of the other children in the teams.
While they had good friends where they were living, the Speddings' family history is complicated. Bill and Margaret have each been married before, with kids from previous relationships, and there had been falling outs within their families, some more bitter than others.
Yes.
And what were you looking forward to then?
Well, just retiring down that area.
That area was the mid-north coast of New South Wales. The Speddings lived in Bonny Hills, a village about 20 minutes drive from where William was reported missing. Bill worked as a white goods repairman, installing air conditioners, fixing fridges. 3 days before William's disappearance, he was called to look at the washing machine in a house on a dead-end road called Benaroon Drive.
And I just called in there and had to go back later on. to finish the job off, our first knowledge of the disappearance was by the newscast that evening of the 6 o'clock news. And it didn't mean anything to us other than the fact that a child had disappeared in the local community. And the name didn't mean anything to me because the name of Tyrrell was not my customer's name, so nothing fell into place, nothing twigged.
Bill would later write a book about what happened. Although it's never been published, I've got a copy. The book says Bill had ordered the parts to fix the washing machine and was waiting for them to be delivered when he got a call from the house on the morning William was reported missing. Bill didn't pick up. When he saw the missed call, he called back. No answer. But there were other phone calls between Bill and the house, both that day and later.
And I was quite surprised to be told by the police, because they rang me and said that I was not to mention or disclose that William had disappeared from the house. And I said, well, how am I supposed to know that when he wasn't there when I was there?
4 months later, January 2015, Bill and Margaret were sitting on their back veranda when the police arrived to search his house.
The search of our house wasn't a surprise at all. No surprise, because I knew they were doing searches and around the area, and when they turned up, we weren't unduly surprised. I thought, oh, well, fair enough, they're investigating the disappearance, and come on in, guys, do your thing, and we'll get out of your way.
But the media found out about it.
Police arrived at their Bonny Hills home at 7:30 on Tuesday morning. They spent 48 hours excavating the backyard and emptying a septic tank.
Morning, Sean. What's the latest?
On that, we have fresh pictures that are coming to you now as we go to air. So this is the latest development. It's believed this semi-rural property is linked to another property that was raided yesterday here in Laurelton, where we are, a flat where items were taken.
I know they took computers out, they took a mattress out, and they took a ton of stuff out, actually. They filled the back of a paddy wagon up with it.
Detectives have sent away 3 cars, mobile phones, a mattress and computer equipment for forensic testing.
Those raids and the media reporting would change everything in Bill's life.
I didn't realise that things were so intense, except when during the first recorded police interview, and the questioning was relentless.
I believe you went to that address at Benner and Drive, Kendall, on the 12th of September, 2014.
I never went near there.
This is a recording of Bill Spedding's police interview.
You were there to fix that washing machine.
No.
But perhaps you didn't make it to the house, because as we know, William Tyrrell was wandering around the front yard of his grandmother's house on his own. He had no supervision by any parent at that time for a few minutes. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But
we
believe you were there.
I wasn't there. And the police were really getting upset with me because they were asking questions which I had no knowledge of the content. And asking what happened to certain phone calls. And I said, I don't know. I've got no idea.
I'm telling you on your official records, you got a phone call at 9:03 a.m, but it isn't here. Is there anything you can tell me about that?
No.
What this indicates to us is that specific phone call you received, you deleted from that phone.
You can't delete it.
You deleted that number.
You can't
deleted
delete
that incoming call so that when police extracted your phone, they wouldn't find it in the extraction of the phone. Why is that phone call not in your incoming calls on the 12th of September 2014 at 9:03 a.m?
I don't know.
Did you delete that phone call?
No, as far as I know, you can't delete.
Did you delete that phone call from your telephone number, from your mobile telephone, to show the police that that phone call did not occur for whatever reason?
I don't know. I didn't delete anything.
In his book, Bill says that was the call about fixing the washing machine at the house where William was staying. He says it didn't show up in his phone records because he used the automated answer phone service. Bill pressed 101 to listen to the message, then pressed 22 to redial the number. So it wasn't like a normal phone call. But it went beyond asking you certain questions.
It did, yes.
They said to you, we believe that you may have grabbed William.
We believe that you may have grabbed William from that front address, from the front yard of that address. You may have left the area without anyone knowing.
I'm sorry, I wasn't there.
Did you take William Tyrrell?
No. I just sat there and I thought, what are you talking about? I wasn't there.
Were you frightened?
I was bewildered, very much bewildered in the questioning.
And if Bill says he was bewildered by the questions asked in the recorded police interview, what the detectives asked him when they turned off the tape must have been even more confusing. There was one point when I think the police were driving you from your house to the police station on that day, and in the car they asked you if you knew any paedophiles.
Yes.
And you said, you know, I don't know the names, they're people you knew from the past?
Distant related.
And they said, what about Jeffrey? Meaning Jeffrey Hillsley. Jeffrey Hillsley was Bill's former brother-in-law from a previous marriage. At that time, Jeffrey was serving a life sentence for raping a 10-year-old girl and murdering her stepfather. But did you think at that point they were asking me about paedophiles? Did that start to... What did you think then?
I was very naive. I was totally overwhelmed, very naive about police questioning, and I hadn't done anything to feel guilty about. And so I'm thinking, well, they're just asking normal questions.
After you left the police station that day, you were interviewed for 6 hours.
Yes.
And you left the police station, and as you left, you've given evidence saying that one of the detectives shouted at you, we know you did it, we're going to get you, I'm going to arrest you.
Yes, one detective did. And that was about William Tyrrell. Right.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. At this point, all Bill knows is the police have turned up at his door, raided his house, and later his business office. They've driven him away asking about paedophiles and spent 6 hours questioning him, including saying they believe he took William. But why are the police so focused on him?
Well, by this stage, the disappearance of William Tyrrell had saturated the press.
This is...
You got to realise too, when this happened and they were going after, like at this time, it was all over the news on every newspaper, every news on the TV, just everywhere.
Yep.
And he was plastered everywhere. Like they really...
That would have infected.
Hey? Yeah.
That would have infected his employment and everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know he lost his house, and I know he lost everything, his wife, his family, because they all turned on him. They all believed in the end, because the police went so hard for him. Yeah, all over Australia. And that's what I mean, and that's something that I really want to emphasize, especially for, like, I know a lot of the replay crew coming that are from America. They've got to understand this is not a story that was just, I mean, it was in one section where it happened, but it has affected all of Australia, and each bit of these, like, little segments that they're going through, they were newspaper articles everywhere. But Bill Spedding, yeah, he was everywhere when this happened. I actually feel sorry for him.
Bill Spedding's lawyer, Peter O'Brien, speaking in a separate interview.
It had permeated well into the community psyche. It worried parents. It worried anyone in our community who's right-minded and thinking of the welfare of this poor child who'd gone missing in such mysterious circumstances. And the police response was naturally and correctly to do whatever they could. The problem, I think, in some respects with the approach that they took is that they focused too heavily on Bill Spedding once they had what was probably a distorted piece of fabricated information on an anonymous tip.
That anonymous tip was made within days of William Tyrrell being reported missing, according to police records. The cops received at least one call claiming Bill has a history of alleged involvement in some really awful offences. I'm not going to say what those alleged offences are, because here's the
Hi, beautiful Earth. How are you, my darling? Welcome in.
Hi.
thing about them. They'd already been thrown out in court decades earlier, when a judge said the person making these allegations against Bill was, quote, obsessive, compulsive, and bizarre. It's all tied up in that complicated family history and the falling outs I mentioned at the start of the episode. The judge said this person's evidence, quote, contained inconsistencies which were so numerous that I cannot now take the time to refer to them. He also said this person programmed and tutored others to make allegations against Bill, allegations the judge said he was reasonably satisfied were not true, which is a problem.
My beautiful Van, how are you, my darling? Welcome in.
Hi, Van.
Because if the police were following that anonymous tip, they should have known this. And if they didn't know it before they raided Bill's house, they certainly should have done so after. Because a copy of the court records containing the judge's damning demolition of the case was seized during the police raid on Bill's office. Looking back at it now, how much damage do you think that has done to Bill and the people he was living with at the time?
Well, an incalculable amount of damage. But what it seems to have done in this case is put him at the centre, and entirely by coincidence for the fact that he was a washing machine repairman going about his ordinary daily work, that it's brought him to the centre of the disappearance of a child that's raised the entirety of Australia's concerns.
That, however, isn't even the worst of it. To my mind, the worst thing is that the police raids on Bill's house and business, which put his face on the TV and the front page of the papers, were launched before the cops properly checked Bill's alibi for the morning William was reported missing. Meaning, no one confirmed if Bill actually was where he said he was in this statement he gave detectives.
On Friday the 12th of September 2014, I dropped the boys to the bus stop and went back home.
That was in the early morning before school. The last known photograph of William Tyrrell was taken at 9:37 a.m. At 9:44, Bill's bank records show he bought coffees for him and Margaret at a cafe in Laurieton, a town a short drive from where William was staying.
Margaret and I went to the school assembly at Laurieton Public School. This would have been about 10 a.m. and finished at about 12:30 p.m. I spoke with some of the parents that were there and also spoke to the principal and one of the teachers.
After the school assembly, Bill says he went to his office,
which is located at Bowl Street, Laurieton. So I finished up at the office so I could pick up the kids from school at 3:30. I had no dealings with the female foster carer's mother family on that day. In fact, I had no contact with them from the 9th till the 15th September 2014.
If Bill's alibi checked out, it was physically pretty much impossible for him to be involved in what happened to William.
They also had my written diary, which they had photographed or photocopied. And in it was I had appointments written, and I had appointments which were moved around so that I could attend the assembly on the 12th of September.
Did you trust the police at that point?
I did at first because a little boy went missing and I knew they had to look for this little fella.
Do you trust them now?
No.
You say that with a smile. I'm guessing you weren't always smiling about it, no? Do you trust them?
Don't I trust them? I had not one way or the other. I was just confused as to their what they were up to.
Bill wasn't the only person wondering what the police were up to. At this point, it's worth saying these decisions, who to target and how, in major cases.
How could he have trusted them when they were continually dragging him down to the police station, had him everywhere, ripping his yard up? Because if you remember when it happened, they were like literally ripping his yard up.
Yeah, who would, like?
Just, come in and turn everything upside down and I'll trust you.
Yeah.
Don't get decided by any one detective. They're reported up and signed off by senior police commanders. But the detective running the investigation into William's disappearance was Hans Rupp.
Well, I think that someone grabbed him off the street, bundled him into a car, and he just disappeared.
And at least one person inside the police force was starting to question what Hans was doing. That person was another detective. Introduce yourself. Tell me who you are.
Gary Jubilant, retired detective, now working in the media.
But who were you before you retired?
I was a police officer for 34 years, specialising as a homicide detective. That was my passion. That was my drive.
At the time Hans is planning the raid on Bill Spedding, he's only a few weeks off retirement. Gary is due to take the case over. When he hears about the planned raid, Gary tries to stop it.
I had concerns before I took it over because the whole focus of the investigation at that stage was on Bill Spedding. They were going to execute a search warrant on his place, and once the search warrant's executed, he would know that we were looking at him. I spoke to senior police and said, could we put a hold on that and stop that occurring? And I suppose I'm overstepping the mark to a degree because I wasn't in charge of the job at that time. I was put in my place, firmly put in my place, and told, don't you worry about it now. When you take it over, you can then run it the way you want to run it.
So you tried to stop the search warrant being executed?
Yes.
Why?
Because I didn't believe all the stuff that needed to be done. I wanted to approach it a little bit differently, not so overtly. I wanted to approach it more covertly. Once you've executed a search warrant, you've put your hand up and said, basically, we think you're the suspect for it. I didn't want it to go down that path.
Gary called up his boss, the homicide squad commander.
I said, can we phone Mick Willing, who was at home on annual leave? He was the boss. And I explained it to him. And I was basically told words to the effect of, Jubes, just wait till you take it over. Let Hans retire in peace. And so I just stepped aside and they did the search warrant on Bill Spedding's place.
It's not just Gary Jubilant saying this. His version is backed up by the person he spoke to, Michael Willing. And you were the homicide commander at the time William Tyrrell went missing.
That's right.
Do you remember that happening?
I do.
How would you describe Hans?
Hans, old school homicide squad detective. Hans had an abrupt but really effective style, to be honest. But he was determined, and he worked up until the last day that he had in the detective's office at the homicide squad. He was working his backside off.
You said he was a hard-working detective.
Yep.
Was he a good detective? How was his management?
He was a very respected detective, certainly respected across the police force, respected within the homicide squad, respected by his team.
Decision was made under Hans Rupp to raid Bill's home and his office. Were you aware at that point whether or not Bill's alibi had been checked?
I wasn't personally aware. I was being advised as the homicide squad commander by Hans in terms of what he thought he was working on.
Did Gary ask you not to do it?
I recall Gary in the last days before Hans retired. I think I was on leave, and Gary wanted to jump in and take it straight away.
Did you tell Gary to leave it, to let the raids go ahead and to let Hans retire in peace?
Yes.
The right decision looking back?
Oh, I don't know. You know, at the end of the day too, Hans was an extremely experienced investigator, and I had no doubt or no reason to question anything that he was doing.
But Gary Jubelin kept asking questions.
There was no investigation plan on this investigation. Now,
when you took it over, there was no
investigation plan. Now, I say that with a certain tone because I'm so surprised that I consider it was the state's highest profile investigation, if not the country's most high profile investigation.
An investigation plan is a written document that essentially says how we are going to conduct this investigation.
How we're going to conduct the investigation, the direction, the strategies, the approach to the investigation. It's like a framework for an investigation.
Do you remember seeing an investigation plan that Hans drew up?
I can't specifically recall it, but that's part and parcel of any investigation.
So you would have expected there to be one?
I would have expected there to be one.
What were you told by your commander when you were given this job?
My commander, Mick Willing, detective superintendent at the time, he told me that it's a bit of a cluster.
Meaning?
Meaning that I needed to sort it out when I took it over.
Did you say to him words to the effect, this investigation's a mess, I need you to come in and sort it out?
Look, that's been raised in various actual proceedings, to be honest. I can't recall saying that to him. I did have concerns about the investigation. I can't recall saying those words.
Police documents from that time show Gary recorded written concerns about the previous running of the investigation into William's disappearance, which seemed to have shifted its attention away from and back to Bill Spedding over time, possibly to the detriment of other lines of inquiry, Gary wrote. But Bill's name was out there, and it was everywhere, in TV bulletins and news reports. Given what had happened, the police records show Gary decided to focus on Bill with, quote, as many resources as are available to gather evidence of his involvement or exclude him from involvement. Can I ask you how you feel about Gary Jubelin now?
Well, I only know him as a very aggressive policeman. I don't know him personally. And I think he was handed a poison chalice. That he was handed something that was going to cause him a lot of grief.
Do you remember on the day you were arrested?
Yes.
When in the morning, outside your house, there was a line of cars around the corner, which was full of media?
Yes.
I was in one of those cars. This was April 2015, a few months after Gary Jubelin took over the investigation into William's disappearance. I was a reporter covering the case for a newspaper.
The thing was that I said to Margaret early on, there's something up because there's media everywhere.
Were you apprehensive at that point?
I knew something was up, but I had nothing to feel guilty about. If I'd been a criminal, I'd be out there panicking. but I wasn't a criminal, right? And the thing is that, the media's out there. Why are they out there? Oh, well, it's another day. Media out there.
It wasn't just some media out there. All the media were out there. A line of cars and TV trucks down the road and round the corner. And I was in them. I found out Bill Spedding was going to be arrested before it happened from another journalist. Everyone seemed to know it was coming. I tried to get Gary Jubelin to confirm it, but he wouldn't. Sometime in the mid-morning, Bill left the house and drove off. We all panicked. Do you remember when I think you left and went into Port Macquarie?
Yes.
Do you remember what happened?
Yes, it was an absolute chaos.
It was chaos. We followed Bill in a convoy. None of us knew where he was going or why the police hadn't turned up yet to arrest him, but all of us were desperate not to miss the next big break in the William Tyrrell investigation. And I think at one point you sped up to try and get away from us. And we were overtaking cars. We may have jumped lights. The Sydney Morning Herald nearly crashed into my car. And I remember feeling at the time this was basically harassment.
It was.
I think you got out of the car in Port Macquarie and reporters jumped out of cars.
Good night, beautiful S, my darling.
Good night.
And surrounded.
My daughter's just come out to get the cat and she's chasing it around the room. He's like, no.
Did you? And then I think you got straight back into the car.
I thought to myself, well, I'll just get back in the car and go home.
What was it like driving along the road with a convoy of reporters following you?
So what can I do now to piss them off?
At one point, you almost lost us. I think you went over a roundabout and then a car came round and cut us off. But then we sped up. So we were breaking speed limits to catch up.
Very bad boys.
Yeah, we were pretty bad that day. But arguably, so was whoever in the police force tipped off the media that Bill was going to be arrested. That's not normal for a homicide investigation. Like I said, I heard it from another journalist, and Gary Jubelin refused to confirm it. But in the years since, he's been the person blamed publicly for this leak, including by the state government and more than one judge. All of that happened later, when the decision to arrest Bill Spedding was torn apart in court. At this point, I need to be open. Gary Jubelin and I go back a long way to before William being reported missing, when I was a newspaper reporter covering other of his investigations, like the serial killing of 3 children in a town called Bowraville, not far from where William would disappear. Years later, I left the paper. Gary and I co-wrote a couple of books together, which were basically his memoirs. After that, I got another job working in podcasts, including overseeing one where Gary was the host. So he and I get on. We don't always agree. And I've told him when I think he's done the wrong thing, including on this investigation. He doesn't always listen. But given he and I have this history together, the question is whether you think I can be fair and honest in the way I report on Gary in this podcast. All I can do is lay it out for you and let you be the judge. It was Gary Jubelin who turned up at Bill's house that day to arrest him, saying it was for historical offences.
When they took him away, I just lost it. I didn't know what I was doing. I locked myself in the house for days. I wasn't game to go outside because of the media and everything.
Did the media treat you fairly?
Yeah. They just were there. We couldn't move. We couldn't go anywhere. They were following us everywhere, every day. And every morning we'd get up, they'd be out the front.
Miss Sharon, I'm not sure. I can look into it, but I'm not 100% on that one.
How bad did it get with the way people treated you after your name was made public?
We felt we're in a bird cage or a fish tank. Everyone's staring in.
Yeah, like just coming down to court, you could.
Don't you love how the rain brings out all the idiots?
Yes.
And I'm not on a street that's busy either.
You could see people being on the TV and the papers, and you could see them staring.
This wasn't only local news. Bill's name and face were plastered across the country.
Sorry. I watched a YouTube video on Gary Jublin and this other woman. It was ridiculous, some of the things they were saying. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Gary Jublin. I respect the fact, yeah, exactly, Miss Sharon Hearns. And that's what I mean, I'm not even on a busy street. I respect the fact that Gary spent 4 years on William's case. Do you know what I mean? He took it over, I think it was like 5 or 6 months into it. I think it was like 5. But I will say 6 just in case. And he spent 4 years on the case, but he was very gung-ho that the foster parents are innocent. He pushed that the whole time. Do you know what I mean? What he did to Bill Spedding was horrible. The way he treated him was horrible. And even the courts have said that. That's not just my opinion. Bill Spedding ended up getting a payout of $1.8 million for what Gary Jublin done to him. And it was that bad that Gary was charged after it for the recordings because he was making secret, like he was going into Bill Spedding's house, doing interviews that he shouldn't have been doing and secretly recording him, what they're not allowed to do. Yeah, do you know what I mean? He did a lot for William's case, but he did a lot of bad for William's case too. So there's quite a few. I think after the podcast, we'll do a little bit more looking into him as well and what he did do to this case, because he is another whole chapter as well.
Oh, wow.
No, there wasn't. And the thing is, Bill Spedding had alibis. Do you know what I mean? He was on videos and he had receipts. He had alibis for where he was at the time. He wasn't there. So everything they did was without proof. But yeah, there's quite a bit out there on Gary. He's even wrote a book. He's got his own podcast now. I suppose we all have to make money, and that's how he's making his since he left the police force. And he still speaks very highly. And do you know what I mean? I do know at the inquest he did want to speak, and they wouldn't let him. So, and they also didn't let him do a Passover, and that was the only thing I do think was wrong. When they had the new detective take over William's case, they didn't let Gary do a handover either. Just a bit of...
Yeah.
After he was arrested, I was in the media pack the next day for his first court appearance. Afterwards, outside the court, someone from the police gave all the journalists photocopies of a court document describing in graphic detail the offences police were saying Bill committed. Did you know that was happening?
No, of course not.
In that court document were the same allegations that had come up already decades earlier and had been dismissed once before by a judge. And no, it wasn't Gary Jublin handing out that document.
They were using that as a leverage or pressure or something to create, inverted commas, a breakthrough.
The story exploded.
What was the worst of it?
I was in the car with Mark, and this fellow got out of the car in front and made the gun symbol at me. And
what about the pathology?
Oh yeah, I was escorted out of the pathologist. Yes.
You were asked to leave.
Oh yes, yes.
As soon as he read his name, Bill Spedding, they
asked me to
leave.
How did your business go?
It went. It went and gone. It dropped to nothing almost overnight.
So your business is gone?
Gone, yes.
Which means your income's gone?
Yes.
I mean, what does that do to you in terms of...
Well, financially we're screwed.
After a few months, Bill got bail, meaning he was released from prison while waiting for a trial to take place. Things got so bad, he and Margaret moved house, but his name was now tied up in the public imagination with William's disappearance.
I really would appreciate if you were never out the front if the children are around.
Oh, I've got a couple on occasionally.
You will not do it if you see children.
A neighbour told Bill she didn't want him outside with her children.
I just would like to know that you would never have a mobile out here in case you're grooming my children, if you're viewing any of my children or their friends.
Okay, that's not a problem.
And I don't want the blinds open while they're playing out the front because I just don't want you around when there's so many children here.
Somehow, strangers got hold of Bill's phone number. He got death threats. Bill reported these threats to the police, but nothing happened. One day, walking down the road, a man asked if he was Bill Spedding. Bill said yes, and the man lurched towards him, grabbing Bill's throat. Bill reported this to the police as well. He doesn't know if anyone got charged.
I don't know. It's just been a lot on us. The kids are still feeling it as much as what we did.
Bill's wife, Margaret, says the worst impact was on the kids.
Because they were happy when they were with us. They were really good. But after, they just sort of went downhill.
Bill was prevented from seeing the kids after the first police raid. After being arrested, his bail conditions stopped him from seeing any children.
They weren't happy.
Before William went missing, those kids who were living with you, were they doing well?
Very well. They were done well at school. The teachers just loved them and loved the work we were doing with them.
And did it then have an impact on them as well?
It did, big time, yes.
A terrible impact.
In what way?
Well, they were pulled out from a stable home to a completely unstable environment. They were severed from their friends, severed from their sporting activities, their family, which was us. And there was a lot of rebellion generated because of that.
So all that time between the original raid on your house and the end of the trial, which I think was about 3 years, you couldn't talk to them?
Well, I was prohibited from contacting anyone under 18.
Has that had an impact on your relationship with them?
With the children? Well, they were devastated.
Yeah, well, they keep saying while they were with us, they'd never been so happy when they were living with us, and then when that got taken away, they went downhill.
So if you're counting up the number of lives damaged by the investigation into William Tyrrell's disappearance, you have to add these 4 kids as well. All that damage might be one thing if Bill was found guilty of the offences he was charged with. But on the 5th of March 2018, 3 years after the first police raid on his house, Bill Spedding was found not guilty. 4 years later, December 2022, he was awarded almost $2 million in compensation by the New South Wales Supreme Court, which found, quote, there was no reasonable or probable cause to institute or maintain the criminal prosecution against Mr. Spedding, and the material available supported an overwhelming inference that the allegations were concocted and false. The court directly criticised the police involved, saying, quote, the officers had material that must, and certainly should, have led them to doubt the viability of the case.
Hey, Gary, can you hear me?
Yes, Dan.
I'm not in the country at the time of the court's decision, so I talked to Gary Jubelin on a Zoom call.
You sound like you have got a lot on.
Yes.
Have you had time in all of that to read through the judgment in the Bill Spedding matter?
Yeah, 87 pages, so I glanced through what I consider relevant. Yeah.
Gary Jubelin oversaw the investigation into William Tyrrell's disappearance, but he wasn't the officer in charge of the prosecution of Bill Spedding over these separate offences. That was a more junior detective who was part of Gary's strike force. And everything the strike force did was written up in progress reports, dozens of them, signed off by senior commanders. And the decision to charge Bill Spedding was assessed by other specialist detectives and the police force's own lawyers. But it's Gary's name that keeps coming up for criticism in the court's judgment.
It seems to be that the essence of the judge's decision is that and I say I because it does, a lot seems to come back on me.
In essence, the court found Gary's strike force charged Bill Spedding with other unrelated offences that had already been rejected decades earlier by another judge, as a way of putting pressure on Bill to see if he or someone close to him would crack about William.
I've been called into account for what junior officers are doing under my command. No one above me has been called into account what I was doing.
So there's a document the judge flags, which you wrote, called the Strike Force Roseanne Proposed Operational Phase. But what bothers me about it is that describes the arrest of Bill Spedding as being phase 5 in a series of phases that are part of the investigation into what happened with William Tyrrell. So it very much looks in that document that you are arresting Bill Spedding on these unrelated offences as part of your investigation into what happened to William.
Yeah.
I mean, in that document, it absolutely looks like that's the case.
Okay, and to answer that, this is the chicken before the egg. And I'm not making this offence up. These are serious offences. So, yes, I'm going to use the fact that we've got prima facie case on a person that in the timing of it, it is a phase. But that, to me, and this is what really aggrieves me about this decision. I think that was some of the best police work I've done in my career. There were so many moving parts, but I'm using every available resource, technique and strategy I had available to me.
You can't do that, though, as a cop, can you? You can't charge someone with unrelated offences in order to pursue a different investigation.
Let me say this. If you're going to have to charge that person, do you think it's acceptable that if I charged Bill Spedding, I didn't have a conversation with him after that point in time about William Tyrrell? Do you think I should have just charged him? Because this is where I think it comes down to...
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying you can't do what you say you did, and you're saying I couldn't have done the alternative. I would have been wrong not to charge him and not ask him about William.
I could imagine being in the coroner's court with the family looking at this investigation and being asked, so you were looking for the person responsible for abducting a 3-year-old child? Yes. And there was a person of interest that you were looking at? Yes. And you didn't think it was worthwhile speaking to him about the abduction case?
Unsurprisingly, Bill Spedding's lawyer feels differently about this.
That suggestion by Gary Jubelin that the matters were distinct, that he was going to bring bear on charges that were already open for him to charge has been made a nonsense of. Now, I don't understand that if police officers have someone that they suspect for one thing and they have reasonable probable cause to charge them with another thing, that they might well bring those charges in order to put pressure. But that wasn't this case. This was a case where the charges have been demonstrated to have been palpably false and should never have been laid.
And that is what the court found. Reading through the judgment, you can see the alleged victims' accounts of what happened change. A crucial eyewitness refuses to cooperate with the police for months. And when he finally does, his evidence is that the offences didn't happen.
The case fell away. The case...
Oh, thank you, Miss Sharon. 1 year. 1 month. 1 year. 1 month.
Oh, wow.
Fell away as long as it went. But there was also a failure to disclose by police.
The different problems with the case are not all included in police documents, including those provided to the prosecution lawyers.
The failure to disclose demonstrated further, the court found, the malice that had initially swept them up.
Although the person described in the court judgment as having failed to disclose this information isn't Gary Jubelin, Gary was in overall command.
Okay, just to put some of the things you are alleged to have done to you, and these are things you're alleged to have done directly rather than as a supervisor. The judge says that you or someone working for you leaked to the media that Bill Spedding was going to be arrested.
Yeah. Now, both you and I know that is a joke.
Well, look, I know you didn't leak to me because I was trying to get you to tell me and you wouldn't tell me.
Yeah. When I found out that the media were there, I said someone from above has leaked this.
So you're saying it was leaked by somebody above you?
Yes.
So Bill Spedding says at one point when you came to arrest him, he was actually on the phone to his solicitor and he said this to you and you said, I don't care what fucking cunt you have on the phone.
Right, language.
I can believe you're using that language.
I probably would round the pub. When I'm arresting someone and doing police work, that wouldn't be used.
Bill Spedding's draft book describes the moment when he was arrested by Gary, but doesn't mention Gary using this language, which is something that was claimed later in court. Nor does Bill's book describe something else said in court, that Gary threatened Bill, saying, "Mr. Nice Washing Machine Man, I am going to ruin you."
I can see you saying, Mr. Nice Washing Machine Repairman.
I can't recall saying
that he did. But what language?
Yeah.
that. I can't but I put it in the context of a conversation. I am trying to find a 3-year-old boy that could possibly be alive. So it wasn't an inappropriate conversation, but it wasn't a comfortable conversation. And I think that's the way.
What you're saying you didn't say is the bit that is a threat. I am going to ruin you.
I can't make any threat, promise or inducement.
Who said what is really a relatively minor issue. The fact is, the court found Bill Spedding should not have been prosecuted in the first place, and that once he had been, that prosecution should never have continued, and that the result did ruin Bill's life. Bill's own book wasn't read out in the Supreme Court, but our book was, the one Gary and I wrote together. In it, we described how Gary wrestled with this decision about charging Bill Spedding. We wrote, quote, "I'm about to pull the trigger on a guy's life. Get it wrong, and I'd destroy him." The judge found Jubalin knew if he got it wrong, it would destroy Mr. Spedding. The public linking of his name to the William Tyrrell investigation was one thing. Jubalin knew exactly what he was doing. If he got it wrong, it would destroy him, and it did destroy him. Looking back, I think that book we wrote together hurt Gary, because it was honest. In time, the Supreme Court's verdict would be upheld by the appeal court, which described the pursuit of Bill Spedding as the worst case of malicious prosecution in the history of New South Wales.
It is, in fact, the highest award of damages in the country for a malicious prosecution. And in those circumstances, well, the judges got it right.
That's Bill Spedding's lawyer, Peter O'Brien. Gary himself is unrepentant.
Right, last question. Given what you now know, and the damage Bill Spedding says he's suffered, do you feel sorry for Bill Spedding?
I don't want people, if people do listen to this, I don't want them to misinterpret that. We've got to accept the ruling of the court. But me personally, no, I don't.
But that's not the end of the story. After Bill was arrested and before he was found not guilty, he spent time in Cessnock jail, a few hours south of Kendal, where William went missing. Bill's cellmate was a man called Tony Jones. And in jail, you were put in a cell with a guy called Tony Jones, who used to be a neighbour of Bill's from years before.
And I hadn't seen or heard of him since, and I didn't recognise him. He had a beard, put on weight.
Tony was serving time for child sex offences.
I said to him, "Watch what you say, we're probably being recorded."
Their conversations were recorded. It was another of Gary Jubalin's operations. Tony Jones had been given a script to work to and a bunch of false documents, claiming to show police had new technology that allowed them to track where somebody had been years earlier using their mobile phone. So the police were listening to the conversation when Bill said, "Well, that means they'll be able to tell I wasn't anywhere near the house on the morning William went missing." It's there in the internal police records from the time. Gary Jubalin updates the investigation plan to say that he accepts on the balance of probabilities Bill Spedding was not involved in William's disappearance, and the police now needed to refocus the investigation on someone else. In his unpublished book, Bill lays out different theories of what might have happened to William and concludes this case has all the hallmarks of a targeted abduction. So we've ended up in the same place this episode started, with the first detective who oversaw the raid on Bill's home, Hans Rupp, who also says it was an abduction.
It was the only logical explanation. He didn't wander off. We know he didn't wander off. So what else could there be?
What was your feeling?
Well, I think that someone grabbed him off the street, bundled him into a car, and he just disappeared, which is really, really sad.
How much have you lost over the course of this process?
10 years.
What's your overwhelming emotion?
I'm tired. Very tired. I've just got the whole lot to go away.
Margaret?
Well, I'm glad it's over.
Is it over?
Well, isn't it?
We don't know.
You once said that there should be a parliamentary inquiry into the way the investigation of William's disappearance has been conducted.
I think so. I think the methods should be...
Do you know the one other person who also thinks there should be a parliamentary inquiry into this investigation? It's Gary Jubilant.
I think so, because he was allowed to do what he did. So it goes up to the higher police hierarchy that he was submitting his plan of action to his superiors. And at no point was that plan of action questioned. So maybe there should be inquiry into that.
So it goes up to the senior police?
Yes.
Bill Spedding is an old man now and has spent several years in different courtrooms since William was reported missing. In the appeal court last year, I noticed he now wears a hearing aid and sat, often with his eyes closed, his head nodding forward, as the court chewed over his malicious prosecution. But what struck me, listening to the details of how Bill was put under pressure by the media, by the public, put under surveillance, charged with other offences, and had his old neighbour sent in undercover, wasn't that this was a straightforward, mistaken police investigation, but rather this was a playbook, a set of tactics that the police would use again and again in the William Tyrrell investigation. Because even while Bill Spedding was still awaiting trial, the lead detective, Gary Jubilant, had moved on, had refocused, and was working on another potential suspect. You once told me that when you're working a homicide investigation, you'll go in like a bulldozer and people will get hurt.
Yep.
What did you mean by that?
The very nature of homicide investigation, if people think you can tippy-toe around the homicide investigation, you're living in la-la land. Homicide investigation is about finding out what's happened. I'm not talking about breaking rules here or going too far. I'm talking about you've got to go after a person. You've got to hunt that person, find that person, and gather the evidence. And to do that, you're going to hurt people.
That's next time on Witness William Tyrrell. A lot of different people have been involved in making this series. Among them, the executive producer is Nina Young. The sound design was by Tiffany Dimmack. The producers have been Emily Pidgeon, Nicholas Adams-Jasbar, Phoebe Zakowski-Wallace, and Tabby Wilson. Research by Aidan Patrick. Original music by Rory O'Connor. Our lawyer is Stephen Coombs. The editor at news.com.au is Kerry Warren. I'm Dan Box.
You gotta love when something else starts on your computer, don't you?
Yeah.
So that's it for Williams. I just noticed it wasn't her 1 month. It was that she actually gifted a membership.
Oh.
And Mary Jane got it. Thank you so much for that. Let me, hang on. Let me do this for you. Beautiful Miss Sharon.
That was scary.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
Supernatural, if anyone doesn't know. They're supposed to be nice, big, strong hunters, and to see them scream at a cat. I just want to touch on one more thing before we do go tonight, because we've had them do where they were digging up for the Beaumont children. Sadly, they didn't find anything, but they have got permission to do another dig in another spot. They're just waiting for permission off the owners of the property because it is private property where they want to dig. But there's the cold case over there are doing amazing at the moment. and there is another case that they are looking at. I don't know if a lot of you know, but you probably do. It's the Joanne Ratcliffe case. I was lucky enough to do a interview with Tammy Wells when she had her sister Susie Ratcliffe on her channel, and I could probably even see if she wanted to come on here. But what they're doing is they now have permission, and they're starting it on Friday. So it's going to happen this weekend, and it's a new gig for Joanne Ratcliffe. I can't remember the other girl's name because Joanne was the older one. There was a 4-year-old. You watch, I'll get off live and it will come to me what her name is. Oh, that's going to get at me now that I can't think of her name.
Oh, Kitty
Christy.
put it in chat.
Christy Gordon. That's it. It was on the tip of my tongue. But there's 2 areas that they're digging in and looking. So I will keep us more informed on that one, and I will be keeping an eye on it because they start the dig this Friday and it's going to be this weekend, 2 spots. So I'm so excited for that. Hopefully they get some answers because I know Susie needs them.
Yes.
But yeah.
I hope, yeah.
I'll go. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I hope they get answers too, like.
Yeah. But their cold case over there at the moment, they are really killing it. They're going through them, and more states need to do that.
They
do.
do.
You know, more states. Yeah. So Friday night we're back for Amy again. We are getting through those episodes, and on Monday night it is the last day of the month for us in Australia, and what I'm going to start doing is on the last day of the month, we're going to do a members draw. So I'm going to make up a little goodie bag of Aussie True Crime stuff that I've made for the channel.
Nice.
And on the 31st, it's going to be a draw for all members, whether you've got a gifted membership or you've brought a membership. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to put all the members onto a wheel, and we're going to spin the wheel, and it's going to be the last day or our last show every month, if that makes sense. So it's just something I want to do just to give back. Do you mean it could be a small one? You might get lucky and it might be a big one. I don't know what I'm going to throw in them, but whatever it is, yeah, I'm going to start doing members draws at the end of the month. And
Nice.
Monday night will be our first one.
Ooh.
And I'm going to have to redo our song because our song at the intro is all of our mods, and I have added a few more. So there's a few mods that aren't in there. I'm going to try and keep it the same as what this one is. But yeah, I've just got to take some names out and put some names in. So I will work on that. Hopefully have it done by Friday, but I can't promise it because I got class tomorrow. I don't know who sings it. I just put like what I want into an app, and they put the song to it. But it's an amazing app.
Oh, send it to me.
I will.
Thank you.
I love it. Yeah, I think I got it off Lunch Lady. She made a heap for Leanie's channel, and I don't know if we're using the same app, but that's where I got the idea from. And then I ended up going and finding an app that done it. Van actually helped me find the app. I rang Van one night.
Awesome.
Find it, and she's anyone that knows her, she always answers all my questions when I have them. Anyway, I think that's it. So we might call it a night.
Okay.
And we'll see you all on Friday. Thank God we held out with the rain.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Stopped. It stopped. Let's hope it stays that way.
Okay. Yes.
Well, thank you everyone for coming in, and we'll see you all Friday.
Every true crime on the rise. Investigate the scene, uncover the lies. From Melbourne to Sydney, all the way to Perth. No case too tough, we'll dig into the dirt. We'll crack the code, find the truth, bring justice to the table. No excuse, Australian legends in the game, bringing light to darkness, no shame. Just got a super chat, let's celebrate. Raise a glass for all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. From cold cases to missing persons, we'll leave no stone unturned. Every version detectives in our hearts will never give up. But justice and truth will always hear us. Oh, thank you so much. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. Thank you so much. Let's celebrate.